What if the absolute worst threat to a failing 1980s marriage wasn't divorce lawyers, but an $85 million studio decision to drop an entire suburban street directly into the Mesozoic area? David Robert Mitchell traded the $2 million indie dread of It Follows for native IMAX cameras and J.J. Abrams' bad robot money, taking what could have been a cheap B-movie gimmick and treating it with the deadly visual seriousness of a lost Steven Spielberg blockbuster. Hit like and subscribe, and let's talk about the end of Oak Street. Sheba demands it. Set in a picture-perfect 1980s cul-de-sac, the end of Oak Street follows Denise and Greg Platt, a couple quietly drifting towards divorce, whose mundane domestic collapse is violently interrupted when a cosmic anomaly shears their entire neighborhood off its modern foundation. Trapped on a sheer cliffside overlooking the primal landscape, the Platts and their teenage kids must fortify their split-level home against prehistoric apex predators using makeshift weapons and raw instinct. So I was interested in this. I liked the concept. I'm a fan of the actors, and David Robert Mitchell's directing it. I was a huge fan of It Follows. And I was kind of surprised when it started because he really does abandon that slow burn, surreal indie art house rhythm like Under the Silver Lake and delivers a straight-laced, full-throttle Spielbergian adventure. I mean, it looks like a movie from the 80s. It's got the 1980s Amblin energy. He uses these like amber-hued lighting and sort of like a lush orchestral score from Michael Giacchino. Of course, you got the palpable kids on bikes wonder. I mean, there's a little bit of kids on bikes in this. And it infuses that with this underlying suburban dread. So you have Ewan McGregor as Greg Platt, the father of the family. He plays it fantastically. He's kind of like schlubby, down on his luck dad, whose desperation to keep his family intact feels painfully grounded before even the dinosaurs arrive. And of course, Anne Hathaway is killing it in this. She doesn't treat this as like genre trash. The further this goes in, I mean, she gives it her all. I mean, she is wrestling with this raw, weary intensity and this marital apathy and stepping up with a rifle. She's almost like suburban Sarah Connor at times. And I gotta talk about some of the little comedy bits in this and how well they were done. Mitchell, he peppers these scenes with like dry, understated observational gags. Like, you know, the family worrying about the food spoiling in the dead fridge and opening it and shutting it real quick. It has quite a few of these sprinkled throughout, and it does really lighten the mood. It's a goofy premise, but it does it without undercutting the stakes, because the movie does get dramatic towards the end. I think the cinematography is great. Mike Giacchino's, he does a great job with the native IMAX framing, and the vintage lens choice just makes this 2026 feel like an authentic like 1985 production. And even Mitchell, he has some unique shots in this. There is a scene where they're talking with each other and he uses this like deep focused split diopter shots to keep an intimate domestic arguments into the foreground while, you know, prehistoric shadows shift in the background. And this movie is a hard PG-13. I think it really rides the absolute like razor's edge of an R rating. It doesn't really even sanitize the violence. A lot of people die. A lot of people get torn up. And it's got like these clever cutaways or that you get, you know, glimpses of the gory aftermath of it. Now the dinosaurs, they are undeniably CGI, although they are rendered with a lot of good detail and feel weight heavy. They don't feel fake. I feel like if Mitchell was going for that Spielberg sort of feel to it, I feel like some of the close-up shots could have been like animatronic, something a little bit more practical, tactile. But with this being an $80 million budget, it was probably just to keep it low. This isn't a franchise film. This is an original IP. And I have to like praise also before the dinosaurs are revealed, they do it so subtly. They build up to it fantastically. You just like slowly introduce that threat, like the low growls echoing behind plastic trash cans, or like a giant 3-toed footprints around the town, or just like a terrifying glimpse of something in the woods. Now I got some critiques. This isn't like flawless. There's a sequence where the son goes out at night to find the dog, and then the daughter chases after him. And then he runs into a bully that beats the crap out of him, and then one of their neighbor girls is out there. I'm like, why are all these kids out at night with these velociraptors running around? And I just brought up the bully. I'm like, the whole inclusion of like, and that's a standard 80s trope, kids on bikes thing. You got to have the neighborhood bully. I just felt that whole thread with the bully was just pretty pointless, especially when it's like the primary conflict is literal extinction. Now, I was getting a little annoyed with the seemingly plot armor of some of the characters, but I mean, at a certain point, and I don't want to spoil anything, but Mitchell violently shakes you out of that safety net, even if the overall ending kind of pulls like a few punches relative to how dark that third act gets. So Bad Robot producing this led fans to dissect every frame of the connection to the Cloverfield universe, apparently. I didn't know this. I try not to look at trailers or anything. I'm overseeing trailers. I'm overseeing too much of a movie. So I have to point this out. This is what they discovered. So the original title of The End of Oak Street was Flowervale Street. So translates word for word to 10 Cloverfield Lane. So flower is clover, vale is field, and street is lane. I didn't come up with this. I found it on the internet. And also the lead family's last name is Platt. And that sparked widespread theories about this story that serves as an origin to Hudson Hud Platt from the original 2008 original Cloverfield. I think he was the guy holding the camera the whole time. So there might be a connection there, but I don't know. If you're a fan of the Cloverfield films, let me know what your theories are in the comments down below. But Warner Brothers, like, giving him like an $85 million IMAX studio tentpole just from like a $2 million indie film like It Follows, it's a rare anomaly. And, you know, they changed the title from Flowervale Street to The End of Oak Street is because they thought it sounded too much like Fruitvale Station. And so this was originally supposed to come out in May 2025. I had no idea. And apparently Warner Brothers was testing 3 distinct cut endings that varied the level of explanation behind the temporal time slip. But with that said, I want to talk about that ending. So if you don't want to know about the ending of The End of Oak Street, skip to the overall thoughts in the chapter below and my final score that are all spoiler free. But I want to talk about that ending. So I was talking about the plot armor of the movie. It was kind of getting a little annoying, and then it just shook me out of it because there's like an emotional pivot in the finale. Like Greg Platt, Ewan McGregor, he defends his wife and basically knocks out the T-Rex with the sledgehammer, goes up to his wife, and the T-Rex gets him. He's mauled and killed in front of them. He has his leg bitten off, and he's screaming, and then the T-Rex just eats the upper part of his body. Like, people were laughing and clapping when he knocked out the T-Rex, but the theater was silent. They were silent after that for a good, 5-10 minutes after that. And it does strip away like the save nobody dies in an 80s movie cushion. I think that elevated this movie for me personally. So through the movie, they find out there's a temporal portal that basically took their whole neighborhood and transported it in prehistoric times. Denise, Anne Hathaway, leads her remaining children to the glowing spatial rift at the boundary of the Mesozoic zone, leaping through the breakout of the prehistoric trap. There's a whole thing about it. It kind of blinks in and out of existence, and then the kid tries to jump through it, and it just goes away. Anyway, they make it through after a big battle with dinosaurs in the house that they're trying to get through. So they get through it, and then instead of returning to present day, Denise and her kids emerge into a modern suburbia moments before the actual displacement occurred. So they kind of travel a little bit back in the past by 20 minutes. So Denise realizes she has a window of agency. She calls the alternate timeline version of Greg on his landline, getting him to deliver a pizza to a certain address to get out of the neighborhood. She watches afar as the original Oak Street shears off and vanishes into thin air a second time, and replaced by a land with dinosaurs on it. And she's saving a Greg, but leaving her original husband dead in the past. So, the timeline doesn't heal cleanly. The neighborhood is left with, this bizarre temporal scars. most notably highlighted by a neighboring family living alongside a duplicate daughter. So the daughter went through there with them, and her parents died in the dinosaur land. So she went back to get her family. Well, getting her family, she also got herself. So there's two of her. But Denise is an author. She wrote everything that happened with her family going to the Mesozoic zone, and it's a happy ending, I guess. And that's why I was saying it's kind of pulling its punches, because she warned a lot of people. You see this highlight reel of everyone she saved that died originally in the movie. But, I mean, it's a Spielbergian sort of movie, so I guess I'll allow it. You don't want it to be too much of a downer. That's just not the tone this movie set. So, you know, the themes of, like, fragility of a suburban nostalgia. You know, like manicured lawns, two-car garages, cul-de-sacs act as, like, a fake security blanket. Mitchell systematically strips away power grids and municipal infrastructure, proving the domestic ideal crumbles the second it is forced to interact with raw nature. And you got the marital pressure cooker, the underlying strife in the marriage throughout the movie. I guess the anomaly is kind of like a physical extension of their failing marriage. The survival crisis forces them to confront their emotional distance, turning the external fight against apex predators into a mirror of their internal domestic collapse. And I guess it's sort of a bittersweet conclusion. Denise doesn't get to erase her trauma. She's rescuing an alternate timeline version of her husband, emphasizes that loss cannot be neatly undone by sci-fi mechanics. Or maybe it can. And at the very end, Denise authors a best-selling book detailing the Oak Street displacement, and writing becomes the sole human mechanism capable of imposing order and structure onto a terrifying, illogical universe. The end of Oak Street is a rare, ambitious, high-concept gamble from a studio willing to hand $85 million to an auteur with a weird vision. Despite a couple of script missteps in the second act, namely some bizarre character choices with the kids wandering around raptor territory and an out-of-place bully subplot, David Robert Mitchell delivers a tense, beautifully shot, hard PG-13 creature feature that respects its audience. It channels classic Amblin wonder without drowning in cheap nostalgia, grounded by powerhouse performances from Ewan McGregor and Anne Hathaway. If you've been waiting for a dinosaur movie that prioritizes dread, craft, and genuine human stakes over sterile blockbuster slop, this one is an absolute must to watch on the biggest screen you can find. So I'm giving The End of Oak Street a 4 out of 5. But what did you think of The End of Oak Street? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, hit like and consider subscribing. If you want to support the channel a little further, hit that join button down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.